Welcome to the Covert Narcissism podcast. I'm your host, Renee Swanson. I'm Renee Swanson, your host of the Covert Narcissism podcast. And thank you so much for joining us today. I am really excited about today's episode. This is brand new. First time that, I've put that here on the podcast in this way. I am doing an open Q&A with Eleanor Marks. Eleanor has been a guest on my podcast before. She's been very involved now with CNG for a while now. And Eleanor, thank you so much for doing this with me. I'm really excited for where this is going to go.
Got some great questions here. It's going to be a lot of fun.
It will be a lot of fun. So we open these questions to our Facebook group, the Covert Narcissism group. If you're not a member of that group and would like to join, please, search for us and find that group. But we open the questions and just to see what people would think. And we've got some doozies in these questions. The very first question we're going to explore today is from John, and he is looking for tips and help on recovery in the early part of this journey. He is looking for help on how to heal. So this is a great question and a question that we get asked a lot. And I'm just going to kind of get us started. For me personally, I believe that the early stages of healing should be mostly focused on creating a safe space for yourself to heal, whatever that looks like. And it can look like a lot of different things for a lot of people. But if I have an injury, okay, I've broken my leg, and in order for that to heal, the very first step I must do is stabilize that leg. I must create an environment for my leg to heal. So I must quit injuring it. Whatever it is I'm doing that hurt it in the first place there has to be a space for that healing to take place. And I feel that way about covert narcissism as well. So how do we create that safe space? We do it by, giving ourselves a breathing room, meaning maybe I can stop my reactions to them because, I change my expectations. I start just expecting the bad behavior of this person. Eleanor, does that register with you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think too, you got to find out what works for you, not what worked for your buddy, your friend, your neighbor, but what works for you. Because somebody went out and started dating whatever time that might not be for you. And it's a very special process. And finding out things that you thought certainly wouldn't work for you, but finding out that they do, like meditation. I love it when people are like, no, that's not for me. They try it a couple times and then they find the benefit of it. It's a trial and error phase on steroids.
Yes, it really is. And there's no time to waste. If I get started on trying something and what I'm trying does not work for me, does not register, shift gears, move into something else and follow your heart. And what doesn't work for me right now, 6 months from now, might be exactly what I need. And so there is a learning process to this.
I think too, on that, the biggest one that I see is therapy can be very good, not so good with a therapist that doesn't understand what you're going through. And when something like that, you're not feeling good after therapy, you keep going and your therapist kind of, oh, is it really that bad? Is it probably time for a new therapist? And making the shifts to create a better, you're doing the work. You should start to see the results.
I've got so many people who come to me and say, I've been in therapy for 10 years and I'm still like, I'm right back to where I was, or I'm still trying to figure this out. 10 years. That's a long time.
Absolutely. And you got to stop and pause and look of why am I not making progress here? Maybe it's the therapist, maybe it's all sorts of things that it could be. And I know everybody, especially John asks in the early part of this journey, we're exhausted. It was a miracle that you even made it into the therapist's office. Now I got to find a new therapist, but yeah, no one said this was going to be easy. And start the research process over again. I think something too of people, because especially in the early stages, everything is so raw. So you're learning new things that your reality has changed and what you went through, but we think that healing is a linear process. You're doing it, and it's just always going to get better, 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 better. And it's in fact the opposite. It's ups and downs, and it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. And so when you do have those steps back, don't feel like you're not doing it right, or you're a failure, or this isn't going how it's supposed to be. I'm not healing. That it's ups and downs and ups and downs, and embrace those downs just as much as the ups.
That is very, very true. And, on this journey, I do tell people all the time, be gracious with yourself. You're going to make a lot of mistakes along the way, or you're going to, fall back into old habits. You're going to have triggers that come up. You're going to react. You're going to get defensive. You're going to get hooked back into the love bombing again. Like, all of that is going to happen. And it is part of the process. It's part of the journey. And people can get very judgmental of themselves, especially if you've been a victim of covert narcissism, because you've already been through all this judgment. So you just jump on board and keep the path going. And so it is really, really crucial that you be gracious with yourself.
Never goes as quick as we want it to, right? Like the pace is something that's just off the charts of like how long it does take. But I will say, as our mind has played tricks on us throughout this whole thing, every step of the journey, it also plays tricks on us when we're healing, of like, oh, I'm not doing it good enough, fast enough. I'm not doing enough. And one of the things that I did that really opened up my eyes, I'm like, whoa, 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 is I made a list of the things that I was doing, the podcasts that I was listening to, the books that I had gone through, the classes I had taken, the therapy sessions, whether body works, EMDR, whatever. Like, when you actually put it down on a piece of paper, pen to paper, and you're like, I filled up 2 pages of everything that I was putting into myself to get to a better ground in this. And that tangible list is like, oh no, I am doing something. Mind, don't be playing tricks on me that I'm not doing it. I am, because I have this piece of paper.
And I think that it's imperative here at the beginning to journal, document, and like exactly what you're talking about. And I cannot say it enough, is the value of validating your own thoughts and feelings and what you're going through. So if I were to put steps right here at the very beginning of this journey, it's going to be journaling what's going on in your world, the thoughts that are going through your head, whatever you're ruminating on. It's going to be educate yourself 100%. You've got to learn. If I don't know that plant in my yard is poisonous to me, and I go touching it, and then I go touching, my face or whatever, and then I have this massive reaction and this huge mess to it, it's because I wasn't educated about that plant. Well, I'm not educated about covert narcissism. I wasn't when I entered this marriage. And as things started to just go years and years and years of all the frustration, if I had not educated myself, I would never have been able to handle what I went through. And so journal, educate yourself 100%, and identify your own thought patterns. That imperative thinking, like you were just saying, of I should be doing better by now. I should have known better. I should this, I must that. That imperative thinking can also keep us trapped.
Someone told me the other day, I was kind of along those same lines of like, I should be doing more. I should be further along. And like, you're right where you need to be. You're right where you need to be right now. Don't write something that's not there. And that sticks with me. I'm like, yeah, I'm right where I need to be right now.
Yeah. All right. Anything else to answer this question for John?
I'm going to just add take John's question just a further, because his was on the early part of the journey. And just to add on that, there will be a certain point where you're going to have to tap out of, the surroundings of all of covert narcissism. And you'll know when that time comes, of just like, you know what, I'm going to read a different book that has nothing to do with this world. And that's okay too. And You'll just know it when you're there.
I remember going to lunch with one of my friends at one point and said, okay, you have to do me a favor and you have to hold me accountable for this lunch right here, right now. I am not going to say anything about narcissism, my marriage, my husband. my kids, like nothing. And for a moment, we sat there in silence. Like, if I'm not thinking about narcissism, what am I thinking about?
Exactly.
But you have to come up for air. You have to give
Yeah.
yourself that space to breathe.
And there's so many great things that are outside of covert narcissism. I mean, that's why we're trying to get through this, is to experience all the beautiful things in life and all the great books that are out there, and movies and vacations, and piecing ourselves together to go experience all that.
I think I would add that to to John's question of something in the early stages is, even before I knew about covert narcissism, my whole mind was wrapped around trying to keep my husband happy, weighing everything I did by his reactions, his thoughts, his, all of that. So the overthinking and overanalyzing was already taking place. So maybe even in these early stages, maybe even then, we need to go ahead and start taking some fresh air for ourselves.
Yeah, thanks for that question, John. That had me thinking all week. On top of Maren's question here, Maren asks, I would like to know how best to handle a child who is so worried about hurting her father's feelings that she'll lie to not make him feel sad. He apparently feels sad quite frequently, and she feels responsible. I will be absolutely honest, Maren. The first time I read this question, I said, nope, we're not answering this. This is too hard. Pass. No, it's a really tough question, and it really needs to be answered, and we need to address it. I will say that thinking this question, I've gone back and forth of, like, she says child, is it a 5-year-old, a 15-year-old? Right. It depends. So I kind of go back and forth, but I keep coming back to, of like, we definitely don't want to encourage our child to do these lies. But I'm also going to say, don't discourage it, because we're all on different paths. And as adults, we've most likely have been experiencing it much longer than what the child has. We understand it a little bit better than what the child has a view of. And kind of letting the child get to a time and place that they feel comfortable that they can alter their behavior. We lied for our spouses all the time, right? It was a survival tactic, and one that we're not proud of, but we had to do what we had to do to get through it. And this child was doing the same. And if we can support them the best, and like, hey, do you understand why you do that? How do you feel about doing that? And letting them get their, what do we call it? Land legs of, like, being able to stand up. So when they can speak up, it's the right time to do it. How do you
Right.
feel about that?
No, I definitely agree. And when I look back at all you call them lies, they are the excuses that I made for him of, well, he's just not feeling well today, and so I go tend to his needs when he was fine, or, he just had a busy day at work. We all have busy day at work. It's all the excuses that we make, and maybe your child's just learning to do that at such a young age of just making excuses so that she can take responsibility for the parents' feelings. And I would say this, don't discourage the care and compassion that's in her heart. The care that she
Yeah.
has for her father's feelings, that's a beautiful thing. And don't shame her for that. Don't tell her that she shouldn't feel that way or do anything that causes that piece to go away. And that gets tricky. That's a tricky balance, because you want to encourage the care and compassion, and at the same time, not have her carry the responsibility for her father's feelings.
We come from it as the adult, and this was our spouse point of view, versus at a child, and it's one of her two parents. And I say her, yeah, Maren says it's a girl, so I'm going with the right gender here. Of, it's a different view when you're sharing this, that this is my father, and trying to digest it. And so when we try to help the children, we have to, like, keep in mind, I think you even said it, when we talk uh, poorly about our spouses or whatever, or, like, right, the children take that on as, like, well, that's a part of me too, and now your part of me is bad. And definitely holding that view of what the child has close,
Yeah.
because it's not the same as a adult spouse.
Yeah, one of the thoughts I had on this question was maybe to help. Sometimes it's easier to see what's going on in somebody else's life than it is our own. Okay, and that's quite common. That's also true of children. And maybe a way to approach this would be to teach your child, give her a story about a puppy, the puppy that feels responsible for, and this is age dependent. Of course, this would work with a 5-year-old, not a 15-year-old, but teach the story of a puppy who is doing all the adult responsibilities, the puppy who is taking care of the adult dog, and make it a story that the child can see the story. And maybe then over time, this eventually starts to filter into her heart as to what's going on in her world. Or maybe it's a story about another family, this family and this child, and something that's detached from her, that she can start to see the problems that the dynamics create.
In between that too, of if this, again, right, is this a 5-year-old child or a 15-year-old child, of how they interact with their own friends? Are they on a minuscule scale versus the intimidation of maybe what the father has, but with their friends, are they, speaking up of, I don't want to go to that restaurant, and finding people that are like, oh, okay, and accepting her answer, and having the courage to keep saying how she feels versus what other people want you to feel. And hopefully once that gets a little bit more ingrained, it can now move into on a bigger stage of with a father that comes a little bit more of a higher risk, so to
Yeah.
say, in speaking up.
I do think it's important that we give our kids the safe space with us to be learning to set boundaries with us, the safer parent, because we don't want to learn to set boundaries with the hardest person. Like, you don't start there. You
Yeah.
don't start with the one that
Right.
is the hardest to set boundaries with. Encourage, your children to set those boundaries with friends, not just always to defer
Yeah.
to what they want, to defer to what they need, to defer. That's an easy pattern to get into. But if they start setting those boundaries with empathy, with the, people who are safe in their life, then maybe this can carry over to the ones that are harder to do.
I do it with my sons. I have two teenage boys, and Christmas has just passed us by, and um, I got them pants for Christmas of the certain brand that I like. I don't know if they liked it, but they would tell me that they liked the pants. Okay, and then I'm like, I'm going to be more upset if they're just you never wear them. I want you to tell me the truth, and so we work on that. Like, sometimes you need to tell people unfavorable things. I don't like those pants. Now I got to go return them. Now I'm probably like past the day to return them. I probably, but it's okay. You speak what you need to say, and we can't please everybody all of the time.
I do think it's important. I mean, I've got two boys as well. We've shared some of those stories, between us. But I do think it's important to teach our kids and ourselves. There's firm boundaries, hard boundaries that can come out mean. They're more, what we've dealt with the narcissistic people in our life. But these are, that I'm tired of you being sad all the time, or you go figure it out, or whatever. These are those firm boundaries that are painful to the people around us. Or you can go to the other extreme and you have no boundaries. And that's, I'll do everything for you. I'll take care of everything. I'll fix it. I won't ever stand up for my own needs and wants. But what we want is to be able to have boundaries with empathy. I want to be able to have, I don't know, call them soft boundaries, flexible boundaries, boundaries that, have soft edges to them, where it's being able to speak up and say, I really don't like these pants, but thank you for getting them. But I like those pants better. Would it be okay? It's being able to set that boundary with empathy.
That was a tough question, and not one that has an answer that you can just do tonight, or like, right, like that's going to be a process to get to a point where that child can speak up to the father.
And again, it's age dependent. You're very right on, are we talking about a wee one? Or are we talking about a teenager who's, probably already trying to set some firm boundaries with some people in their life? So it is age dependent. It is a process and a journey. I would say, to Maren, is validate how your child is feeling. Focus more on that validation, that connection, that safety you can provide to that child. Focus more on that than trying to correct bad behavior or change bad behavior. Focus more on the connection first.
Yes, the safety. Safety. It's a great point.
Well, Eleanor, thank you so much for joining me in this. I look forward to doing this more often. We are going to try to do this maybe a couple times a month or once a month to get started. So watch for the post in the Facebook group. We're going to be throwing that out there with the questions that we've addressed, and look for future questions. So I tell everybody out there, again, the group is Covert Narcissism Group. And if you have any trouble finding it, just shoot me an email. I'm at renee@cnglifecoaching.com. And find us and come join us in these conversations.
Thanks, John and Maren.
All right, everyone out there, I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. You have been listening to the Covert Narcissism Podcast with your host, Renee Swanson. Be sure to check out our website at www.covertnarcissism.com. There you will find many resources just for you to help you on this journey. You can also reach out to me by email at Renee, RENEE, at cnglifecoaching.com. Those letters are CNG, as in Covert Narcissism Group. I do look forward to hearing from you. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. The information provided by Renee Swanson and the Covert Narcissism Podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used for diagnosis purposes and not intended to be a substitute for clinical care. Please consult a healthcare provider for guidance specific to your case. This material discusses narcissism in general. It does not claim that any specific person has narcissism and should not be used to refer to any specific person as having narcissism. Permission is not granted to link to or repost this material to support an allegation or a claim that any specific person is a narcissist. That would be an unauthorized misuse of the material and information provided.